Everyone, and welcome to today's training industry webinar, Unlocking Employee Potential, Powering Productivity and Engagement with Gamification. I'm Jenny Ayers for Training Industry, and I'm happy you could join us today. We have an exciting session in store for you today as we share practical examples and best practices for integrating gamification into your organization's processes and systems to improve employee engagement, productivity, and collaboration. Before we get started, I would like to quickly go over a few housekeeping items to help you interact with our speakers and get the most out of today's program. Throughout today's event, please feel free to put comments in the chat window and submit your questions in the Q&A window. We will address questions throughout the event and at the end of the program during our Q&A session. It does help us keep track if you do put your questions in the Q&A window. I have enabled closed captions for this event. You may select to turn on or off the subtitles by locating the closed caption icon in your toolbar. We also encourage you to share the information you received today with your colleagues and network via social media. Please follow @ELB Learning and #TIWebinars so we're able to follow your contribution to the conversation. When the program ends, you'll receive a short survey and we greatly welcome your feedback, so please take the time to fill that out. And as always, today's webinar will be recorded and archived on trainingindustry.com, and you will be receiving a follow-up email from us that will include a link to the on-demand program for you to share with your team. If this is your first webinar with us, a special welcome goes out to you. In Training Industry, we offer over 100 webinars each year on some of L&D's hottest topics like hybrid and remote learning, learner engagement, data and measurement, and strategic alignment. We cover just about every topic relevant to leaders of training organizations around the globe. And if you have attended one of our programs in the past, thank you for joining us again. Now, to get started, let me introduce you to today's speakers. We have Ben Kirby, who is the Senior Vice President of Global Training and Development at Teleperformance and has been at the Global Digital Business Services Company for 13 years. For the last 7 years, Ben has led the global training organization, and during this time has driven the globalization of training process, technology, and career development programs. Harmeet Singh, is the Senior Director of Global Learning Solutions at Teleperformance and has been at the Global Digital Business Services Company for over 15 years. For the last 3+ years, Harmeet has managed the Global Learning Solutions team and is responsible for global learning content, vendor management, gamification initiatives, and practices within the organization. Stephen Bear is the Chief Creative Officer of ELB Learning. For nearly 20 years, Stephen has been creating award-winning games to engage audiences for employee onboarding, sales, and product training, leadership development, safety, security, compliance, and customer service. Stephen has also helped shape the education industry with learning games that have been leveraged by millions of students around the world. Well, we are so glad you could all join us today. I'm going to hand it off to you now.
All right. Well, let me share my screen. We'll do a changing of the guards here and just a quick overview on both ELB as well as Teleperformance. For those of you who are not familiar with ELB, just a quick overview of who we are. We are working with about 80% of the Fortune 100 companies around the globe, and we build a few thousand unique learning experiences a year. We also have a variety of tools for folks to build them themselves, from virtual reality to gaming to video practice and coaching, so on and so forth. We've won tons and tons of awards for several hundred folks. We've been in business for about 20 years and are thrilled to have clients such as Teleperformance that we've been partnering with for years. And let me move over to have Ben just do a quick introduction of Teleperformance if you're not familiar with them.
Thanks, Stephen. Yeah, so in terms of Teleperformance, we are a digital integrated business service company. And what that really means is we manage customer interactions, and we have a team of over 420,000 people. So we're one of these companies that is one of the biggest companies out there, yet most people won't have heard for us because in general, we are operating kind of customer experience for other companies who outsource to us, whether that be in the form of kind of traditional phone, tech support, content moderation is obviously very big for us now as the world uses social media more. So that's our main work. So we've got 420,000 people, about 90% of them are in core roles, interacting with customers to some degree. And as the information says here, we're very much a global organization. So that's us. Thanks, Stephen.
Okay. Well, I'm excited about this because Teleperformance and ELB Learning have been working together for maybe just shy of maybe 4 years now. And I think that when it comes to our philosophy around training, it's very aligned. And so I wanted to kind of talk about a variety of things, but obviously this webinar is focused primarily on game-based training, and that aligns with this first premise, which is, to effectively train employees or anybody for that matter. You really want to make sure that your training is motivational from the get-go, is memorable, and is immeasurable. And I think that game-based training, without question, accomplishes all these things, and we'll kind of get into the how and why, right? But to kind of touch upon that very concept, Ben Franklin said, "Tell me and I forget, teach me and I remember, involve me and I learn." And games and gamification, game-based learning really requires the learner to lean in, get involved, and as a result, they're going to learn and they're going to remember the concept that you're teaching them. And that can really be, traditional games leveraged in e-learning. It could be event-based training. It could be at trade shows. It could be virtual instructor-led. It really doesn't matter. But games overall are going to be motivational. They're going to be memorable, and they certainly are going to give you a tremendous amount of data, which we'll get to later, and that will help you really understand the effectiveness of your training overall. So, the very first thing I'd like to do, and Ben, I may ask you, I'll throw this on mute. There are so many ways that you can deliver games and use games as part of your training and business strategy. And maybe as I show this reel, Ben can talk about, to the largest extreme, what Teleperformance is doing, because to me, this is incredibly inspiring.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. So just a quick note on this video. So behind the scenes here, you're going to see an example of one of the gaming arenas that we have. This one is in Colombia, and we have them in other countries too. And an important message for this is that this is not all just about training. I mentioned we have 400,000+ people, and gaming is central to people's life these days. And as a result, we actually now have a lot of clients, gaming clients, where we do content moderation within games and things. So as a result, because gaming is so core to what we do as a company now, we have created these environments which are multifunctional to a degree. Believe it or not, this environment here hosted one of the FIFA regional championships for the FIFA game recently. So we've created these environments where not only does training take place potentially regarding certain games, but also they're environments where our employees go to and can book time to play games in their breaks. And actually also at weekends, people take their families. So they're full of all of the latest technology, and they're there both for us to use within training, but also as places of engagement for our teams to make our workspaces better places too. So just a quick overview of that, Stephen.
I happen to love this example because I feel like it really showcases how gaming really touches upon all of us. The next thing I want to talk about briefly is just gaming in comparison to some of the other modalities that we're all consistently using for training. And quite honestly, we all know that e-learning and instructor-led training and games all have a place and a value. But I wanted to talk about certainly some of the benefits of game-based training that we still get asked occasionally. My management wants to understand why games, and I feel like this chart starts to help identify that, right? So when we think about some of the learning metrics that we're all using as our KPIs, whether the training is application based, what the cost is per learner, whether people are going to be proficient at a certain skill afterwards, what their confidence level is as a result, all these things, I think it's important to look and see how different modalities, and of course there's a lot of generalization here, but different modalities compare. And quite honestly, gaming really marks quite high in a very positive way for a lot of these metrics. And so I wanted to kind of share this. And by the way, anybody who wants a copy of this deck, There's lots of really interesting stuff in here, and happy to share it out. The other thing I wanted to do was just talk a little bit about the difference between games and gamification, because this comes up often, right? So maybe just as we, kind of set the stage for this webinar, we define the two, right? So games are a structure of play, right? So that it's an individual experience. It has a win state, often used for entertainment or fun, right? Certainly can be used, as we're going to talk about today, very effectively for training. Gamification is a little different. So gamification is taking some of those elements from games, so goals, rules, interactions, points, badges, leaderboards, results, so on and so forth, and apply them to your daily activities. So, in some cases, that might be some of the systems that you're using for training, and we'll kind of, show those a little bit. But in other cases, it could be building a whole gamification system for learning itself. One of the things that I think also is worth everyone looking at is thinking about games come in all shapes and sizes, right? And you can build or you can buy them. I wanted to, one of the things that Ben and Harmeet and I worked on kind of as a setup to this webinar is to think about showcasing all the different tools that are out there that you can use, right? And we looked at it from two access points. We looked at it from functionality, what can it do out of the box? And what can you do to kind of make a blank canvas and make it do whatever you want. We also looked at the ease of use for the administrator or the trainer to setting it up and building it. What's easy, what's complex. And I wanted to showcase these because whether you're looking at very basic solutions like trivia, there's obviously tools like QStream and Kahoot and Trivi that are, for the most part, out of the box, very simple to use. They are engagement tools. They give you some good data, fairly limited, but nonetheless, they require the learners to lean in. All really important stuff. Then there's game templates, and of course, for those who are familiar with ELB, formerly eLearning Brothers, that's the origin of our company, right? We had game templates that and other types of templates that were designed for years and years, and those plug really nicely into the likes of Articulating, Captivating, Lectora. Then you have things like branching tools, right? So Branch Track, it's a great tool for thinking about soft skills and going down different simulations and thinking about how do you interact with different people, the decisions to make, what are the repercussions, but very specific to that type of soft skill training. Then you have 2D game engines like the Training Arcade or Construct 3, which in both cases, they have a variety of game mechanics in there that you can basically customize accordingly. Under the 3D engine size, we have something like Scenario VR, which is a virtual reality authoring tool. It has a whole bunch of game-based aspects in there. You also have something like Minecraft. And Minecraft's interesting because as we talked about this could fall into the 3D engine category. It could even throw into the programming engine. In that, you can do stuff that's right out of the box. That's where we put it. Or you can really roll up your sleeves and customize the content. In the world and the environment. The last two categories, authoring tools. And for those of you who have not tried, you can build some amazing things in Articulate and Captivate and Lectora. The reason that I have them where they are, though, is the reality is that they lean themselves towards unlimited functionality. It's a blank canvas to a certain degree. But it probably actually deserves to be slightly further to the right because it takes a lot of time and a lot of effort to build stuff in those platforms. And finally, programming. Level X, Unity, Unreal, all really great tools if you want to build a very robust environment, 3D environment, multiplayer environment, things that are closer to what you'd see in a console. And so I think this is a good starting point. And maybe, before I move on from this slide, Harmeet, I know that you guys are playing in a bunch of these areas, and maybe between this slide and the next, you can talk a little bit about what you're doing and what's driving your strategy, if you don't mind.
Sure, Stephen, thank you. And completely aligned to the thoughts that you shared in terms of how we can have the gamification and interaction with the employees when you're doing the gamification activities. We believe it's a great way to enhance learning and skill development in a fun and interactive manner. So definitely, it's a great approach. Now, we see a lot of solutions that we have within the X and the Y axis, and it's all dependent on the setup and the functionality. But I think the important point for us, when we do the selection of the approach that we want to go ahead with, it all mainly depends on, what are the objectives that we have and what's our need. And basis the objective and the need, we narrow down to the options that we want to select. So if we go in terms of, the ease of doing, or maybe, if we want to go ahead and make it more customizable for our employees, we select the option that we have available in the market, or maybe in the options that we have on the slide. So one factor definitely that we consider is to find that sweet spot between, the options that we have available to ensure, number one, we meet our objectives with the solution that we have defined for our learners. And second, it's engaging and impactful. But more importantly, for us, it's also, how easy the solution is to scale up, or maybe to deploy in multiple teams or countries. And you saw Ben mention, we are global. We are a global company. We have a presence in all countries across the globe. So for us, the solution that we select, it's to be a solution that we can easily deploy, or maybe easily scale up with our employees. But definitely, it all narrows down to the approach that we select, which matches our objectives. Because once we define the learning goals, once we have the understanding of the target audience, and then we select the right approach, we can create engaging training games, and we can promote effective learning and skill development. So that's pretty much our strategy and our approach when we go with these tools.
Well, spoiler alert, one of the things we love about Teleperformance is their numbers are off the charts, and so you'll see this on the next slide. And Harmeet, maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the examples and just some of the data.
Absolutely. And I think some of the data that we have on the screen will back up my story, which I narrated on the previous slide. So in Teleperformance, we selected these options. We worked with our vendors. We also developed in-house tools, the gamification solutions for our employees. And our numbers say it because we very carefully selected the blend of the games that we deployed and how we are meeting our objectives and the needs. So last year, we had over 2 million games played in Teleperformance with all these solutions that we had, with 900,000 engaged the players that we had on these games. Now, these games are not just something that we bought, or maybe everything was built in-house. So it's a blend that we either got some of the off-the-shelf gamification solutions, and some of the ones that we worked in-house and we developed them from scratch. Some of the vendors that we worked with, or we are working with, one of them is eLearning Brothers. Definitely we leverage their solution of Training Arcade. And then we had Minecraft Education, and then the Amber Studio, wherein we worked with them to develop one of the tools for us. But these are not all the solutions that we had. You saw in the previous slide that we also use some of the other tools as a solution, but some of the solutions that we used, and they had great success, because everything, again, I might just repeat myself, but everything comes down to the same approach. You select a solution which meets your objective and the needs, and then you carefully blend them together to have such great usage and numbers within the organization.
So something that, we'll keep talking about is not only your games, but the audience that you have, right? So we know that with 420,000 employees, this data happens to be US-based data, right? But I think it's indicative of what the worldwide data is. There's a pretty decent correlation between gamers and workforce. Also, as we think about the generations, there's 5 generations in the workforce right now. And we're seeing that really all 5 generations are reporting playing games, which is really interesting. But I imagine that there are different types of games that are going to not only be appropriate for the content you have, but also the generations you have and what's going to resonate with them. Ben, maybe I can turn over to you a little bit and talk a little bit about the strategy you have as it pertains to thinking about your workforce and what is most appropriate based off of your content and the folks that you're serving it to.
So I think the interesting probably the point to firstly say about Teleperformance is that our demographic is largely Generation Z. So our profiling is probably a little bit balanced differently to the slide before. But having said that, I think what has been interesting in the information we've collected is that actually satisfaction and engagement to the games is fairly consistent. So on the slide before, there was a game we built with a gaming company, and it's been piloted this year in Latin America, and it's almost to replace some of the first day training, so that people can, rather than take individual transactional kind of modules in e-learning, if they want to, they can play it in the form of a true game. And the data that we've had back from that was interesting. So the satisfaction, I think there was a variation of 3% between all of the different generations. So there was no huge difference. And I think you asked the question about the strategy. I think in Latin America, the way we were using the game to begin with was to begin with to give people choice. So what how would they're going to consume ultimately similar learning points, but how do they want to consume it? And a lot of people have gone down the game route, as opposed to some of the e-learning that we would have on our LMS. And I think one of the things that makes it interesting is, and the feedback that you get is, I think to the point you were talking about gamification, is that we have, and we didn't say this earlier, we've got a lot of people working from home, but by playing the games, it generates a bit more community and kind of socialization, because people are not only just interested in the content, but they start talking about the game between themselves, which has helped drive some of the completion rates of the games as a result, because I think with leaderboards, etc., it has helped draw people together within the game.
Yeah, well, that makes sense. I would also, ask you, one of the things that many of our partners are thinking about are accomplishing some of these very things here, right? Driving emotional connection or autonomy, feedback, but delivering these things as part of their training. And I was hoping that this is more of the psychology of play. I was hoping that maybe you can touch upon a few of these and where they're playing roles in your strategy overall.
I think that for a large amount of the 2.7 million games that we talk about has been to drive knowledge checks and kind of getting that instant clarification that people have learned. So one of the reasons we have good deployment is we've tried as much as possible in a big organization to decentralize what we do. And by that, what I mean is that we have thousands and thousands of clients that we work for. So we can't just make one game and that be it. So we deliver 2-3 week training programs for these thousands of clients around the world. And so by providing tools that are easily scalable, we give trainers a more engaging way of kind of validating knowledge in morning training sessions, or equally even live, when people are live in the operational element, just to, sometimes with our clients, we have to do monthly knowledge checks. So that kind of the instant nature of platforms like Training Arcade do really assist with that. One of the other big ways we have been using it, I think, is also to the autonomous part. And we showed the Minecraft airport as an example, and we work a lot with clients who are in hospitality or travel. And again, nature of what we do might mean that some of the people who service those clients may not have experienced it for themselves. So let's just think you're working for an airline, maybe you're selling tickets, you might not have been to an airport before, the person who is helping the customer. So creating the kind of ability for people to learn autonomously, walk around, and essentially simulate the environment by walking around the airport, checking in, getting on the plane. those situations we found have been really well received in terms of impact on learning, and that kind of the ones that really stand out for me in this list, because I think the ability to let people learn autonomously, people generally have different levels of experience, and we can set aside time for people to kind of hone in on the bits they want to know more about, has really made a big difference and helped make learning more efficient.
Yeah, that makes sense. And, one of the things that we talk about often is games acting as a safe place to try and fail, right? And we'd rather someone try it in a virtual simulated environment, learn from their mistakes, and be able to apply their learnings in the real world, as opposed to making them in the real world, right? So
exactly. And we've got quite a few other examples with simulations where even when we're servicing technological clients, and yes, people can essentially try and do the fixes themselves through the simulations as well, for exactly what you say, so they can make themselves proficient quicker.
One of the things we also talk about is, and this is kind of a constant theme, right? Not all games are created equal, not just based off the type of game you're using, but really what skill you're trying to train someone on, right? So, I'm looking at this model just to kind of think about, ultimately, are we trying to drive better knowledge or comprehension, application, analysis, synthesis, evaluation? Ultimately, I think that there are lots of different games that you can use to accomplish these different things. Harmeet, I know we're going to get into maybe a little bit more example of the types of executions we've done, but I don't know if you want to lean in on any of these before I move on from this slide, as it pertains to different types of performance objectives or behaviors that you're trying to get out of your employees.
No, exactly. I mean, this is really important in terms of, the game that we choose, how effectively that supports in terms of the, the outcome that we're looking for. So definitely, there are different outcomes that we have. If you're deploying a game just in training, and the approach or the objective is to make sure that people have knowledge retention, the bit will be that, we will deploy more of the quiz-based games and then have them take those quiz-based games so that they can have a good retention on knowledge and know, what's there in the training content, etc. But equally, as Ben also mentioned, some of the complex situations wherein, we have more of the people who are supporting, let's say, the hospitality industry, or maybe the technical support, wherein they need in-depth knowledge and they need more knowledge and behaviors in terms of how things are done, or maybe the more how-to questions. Definitely we go with, more higher level of skills in terms of, where they have to apply thinking skills, and then they have to analyze in terms of what the outcome will be. So we deploy more of the simulation-based games and scenario-based solutions to them. So it depends in terms of, what is my objective and what we're trying to get to an end to. And definitely, the heading says it all. Not all games are created equally, because you have an objective behind that, and in terms of what you want your learners to gain out of it, and that's how you design your solution.
And so that kind of takes me to the next question, which I'll bring us right to the next slide. I feel like it's helpful for anyone who's viewing not to just kind of see the theory, but Harmeet put together a few case study examples of the why and the results. So maybe you can walk everyone through that, if you don't mind.
Sure, and connecting to the previous slide to this case study slide also, I mean, it's not only that, you select a solution and you call it like that solution or that training game will be a success, because the success depends on various factors in terms of, how you include the content or the content's relevance, how you align to it, to your learning objectives, the engagement. And one of the points that Ben also mentioned in terms of the audience preferences, in terms of what and how they want to learn, so Gen Zs, what are their attributes, how they want to play the games, etc. So when you factor all these, definitely different situation requires different solutions. And some of the case study elements that we have here, I'll just quickly go over these service industries and the solutions that we had. So We picked 3 of the solutions here just to talk about, in terms of how we differently deployed the gamification solution to support our clients and the businesses. And then equally, we had good impact and the positive impact in terms of the knowledge and overall KPIs. So the first one is one of the biggest e-commerce platform that we support. So with them, it's very regular that they keep on, disseminating updates to the employees, and every week or every fortnight, they have new updates coming in for their offers, for their sales, etc. So it's very important for the client to have a very strong knowledge retention with the employees to ensure that, they absorb all those updates, they absorb all those new policy changes, etc. So going back to the slide that we have previously, it's more of the knowledge-based scenario wherein, we have to make sure that there's knowledge retention. So what we did here, we deployed the game-based quizzes, wherein we started doing these quick game quizzes and started, doing assessments on gamification factors. Now, we observed that by doing this, we saw a 23% increase in outbound calls for that group, and also a 65% increase in the sales closures, because people knew all those updates, people knew all those policy changes, because they were doing those quiz-based games, in the training on the production floor. So it's the knowledge retention which was very strong with them. Hence, they were able to positively close these sales, etc. Moving to the next one, which is a technical service provider that we serve, and with them, to one of the points, which is more complex, wherein they need to do all those how-to questions, they need to do all those how-to troubleshooting. So what we wanted to do to ensure that everyone that we are sending to operations from training, they are trained on the top contact drivers, which is basically all the contact drivers that we get on the production floor. They know how to solve them, they know what troubleshooting they need to do, and once they're trained on them, it's very easy for them to deal with those customers over the phone or maybe for any channel, to solve their issues. And there we saw a 15% improvement in our quality scores and a reduction in the average call handling time, because people knew those solutions. They've been trained on those solutions in the training classes and the operations floor through simulations and how to do it. So what we deployed there is a simulation-based activity wherein they can do the whole simulation in the training class for top contact drivers, and then they got the experts of those solutions. Then with the travel and hospitality, it's more of the interactive solutions that we deployed there, which is more in terms of like the airport example Ben quoted and we presented, wherein we wanted our employees to know what really happens at the ground level. So it's not just the theory, we wanted to give them the practical knowledge. If you go to an airport, or maybe if you go to a cruise line, how your boarding works, how you settle to a room, or maybe how you get a flight ticket, how you get a boarding pass, etc., etc. So all those hurdles. So we simulated all those environments into the solution that we did. And as a result, we had a 34% increase in productivity for that group. And also, the quality scores for that group increase. So it all comes down to, the solution that you select, and then the solution that you design basis the situation is the key. And if you do it right, definitely you will have positive results with that.
And I think that's a really important point about analytics and results and metrics overall, right? Is that games provide a tremendous amount of data, and the data, quite honestly, is only as good as what you do with it, right? But when we think about the types of things that you can track, from accuracy to application, decision processing, knowledge retention, skill development, risk tolerance, not only knowledge, but also behavioral components, right? And so, and it's not just for you as the trainer, it's also the learner, giving them some feedback, giving executives some feedback. So Harmeet, maybe I can ask you to dig in a little bit further here and talk about how you guys are utilizing data and what you're doing with it, and who's doing stuff with it.
Absolutely. I believe data is incredibly important for us, because I might be stating the obvious, but if you can't manage what you can't manage what you can't measure. So definitely you need to have your data in place to see, what the performance is, or how you're the solutions that you have deployed, how people are accepting those solutions, and then you analyze the diverse data that you get, which allows you to gauge the overall impact on learners' knowledge, skill retention, or maybe knowledge retention and engagement levels. So definitely that's key for us. And we pay very heavy attention, or I would say too much attention to the data sets that we get. And one of the examples here, I'm taking it from Training Arcade, is the analytics that we get out of Training Arcade or the platform. How do we use it? So what you see here, there's a three-way approach on measuring success and then analyzing data. Is one for the learners, for your frontline people who are taking or who are consuming those gamification solutions or those games when they're playing it. So they get to see the leaderboard, in terms of where they stand or what their score is as compared to the other groups, which gives them the first-hand knowledge in terms of, or the first-hand data set in terms of, their performance, etc., which is right to the frontline stuff. Now, then it moves to the trainers and the managers, wherein, we get more analytics and the trends from the system, which help us to then do the positive trend analysis, and then also look at the back data. You do 8 weeks rolling data in your trend analysis, and you see how your performance has been and how your performance will be for the next several months or weeks. So you can do predictive analysis basis what data you see. And then for the trainers also who are designing these games, for them, it's very important because they get the analytics in terms of, the game that they design with various questions in it, or maybe different simulation activities, etc., how people responded to these activities. And then they can drill down to a question level or maybe to an activity level to then stress more on training and see how they can better stress on training to ensure that people learn better out of these activities. So that gives you the knowledge in terms of where people have a downward trend and how you can improve their knowledge or their skills or behaviors and where you have to work upon. And the third level that we talked about is for the execs. It's very important, and companies of size of us, which is big, it's very important that the solution that you deploy needs to have a return on investment in terms of the solution that we deploy, how it's impacting the overall knowledge, etc. So definitely, we also take the analytics out of these systems and connect it to our internal reports through Power BIs, and then create more meaningful data in terms of what our execs wants to see, what my deployment is, or what my gamification penetration at a country level, at an account level, and at a region level. So they have a clear visibility in terms of what we are driving, what's the vision of the company, and then how close we are towards the vision of the company. So I think when we follow the three-way approach and when we have all these data analytics, it makes it more easy for us to drive engagement and to ensure that we have a better experience for our learners.
And I also want to hit upon, I do want to hit upon that last point you made, which is, we often think about analytics and measuring the success of the learner. But one of the things that certainly platforms like this allow us to do is measure the success of the trainer as well, right? Yeah. And understand, is someone successfully educating their employee base, and how does their approach compare to their counterparts, and then to Harmeet's point, are we seeing deviations by different groups, by different account teams, by different regions? And where can we hopefully course correct quickly based on those deviations? So there's a lot of data that you can really take action on and make some measurable changes as a result. So, yeah. We have about 3 more slides, and I'm seeing some Q&A questions coming, which is great because I want to make sure we open this up to conversations in just a minute. I do want to, we talked about earlier the difference between games and gamification, and I wanted to kind of just point this out. So this is another part of a strategy that is this core to some of the things that we work at ELB. And Harmeet, I'm going to ask maybe you to talk a little about gamification as it pertains to your overall strategy, and some of that obviously sits in platforms like the Train Arcade. Probably some of that sits in your everyday systems that you're using for your workforce as well. But thinking about how do you use points and badges and leaderboards and prizes, incentives, different types of missions, different things to incentivize people and provide feedback beyond just gameplay itself. So would you mind talking a little bit about that as it pertains to the philosophy across the board at
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the biggest factor here is the motivation. Because the more motivated people you have in terms of playing these games or maybe having involved in the gamification solutions, you will see better results. And I think all the motivation and all the engagement with these platforms and with the solutions that we have deployed all then ends up to better productivity, better scores, better KPIs, etc. But that's the tangible outcome. But if you look at the broader picture, definitely, we want our employees to first be motivated about any activity that we introduce, that what's in for them. So if they are involved in the gamification solution or they're doing something new, what they're going to get out of it. So definitely, that's the motivation factor that we have for them, and we really stress on that. But equally, they had their leaderboards, and then they also have like the reward and the recognition process that we have in terms of they can earn those points, they can earn those XP points. Like one of the platform feature in Training Arcade, if I remember, it's that when they log into the platform on a daily basis, they earn XP points, which adds up to their profile. And what they can do, they can accumulate those XP points into their profile, which keeps on getting added. And then, they pretty much have those XP points with them, and then they level up when they play more games. So it's the motivational factor, but also it's linked to the rewards and recognition for the employees in terms of when they achieve certain level, they can unlock the next level, and then it's equally assigned or aligned with some of the rewards that we have at a local level, which kind of like at a country level, at regional level. Most of our countries, they do run programs wherein they have rewards and recognitions on a monthly basis, wherein they select best player, they select the top performing agents, they select the top performing trainers, and it's all based on the analytics that we get, and then how we connect that back to our gamification strategy. So if I talk at a very broader aspect, doing all these gamification activities in the training are the motivational factor for our employees to learn more, because it's all linked to that competitive sense, competitive thinking that they have. Because the moment you infuse games or gamification solutions in your day-to-day work, and you're competing with other team members, it gives you that kick that you have to do better and you have to perform better. And that's the natural instinct, which we all acquire when we get into that competition mode. It's a subtle competition. It's not something that, we hard run on the competition, but it's all motivation, rewards, and the competitive feeling to be, the leader in these activities.
And just before we jump off this slide, one of the things that I didn't bring this slide to this talk, but we talk about often is what are the intrinsic or extrinsic motivations that learners have? And I often talk about 4 different categories that people fall into. So, in the top right quadrant, we talk about those who just want to be the best at whatever they can be, right? It's more about self-improvement and, mastering a certain skill. The bottom right quadrant, we talk about those who really want to explore and unlock new pieces of information. They're just, curious and knowledge hungry. The bottom left quadrant, we talk about, those that are more social in aspect. So they want to either help or be helped by others. They want to be seen as successful. So that's where like leaderboards come in. And then there's the top left quadrant, which are those who just want to win, right? That's the competitive nature. So you want to make sure you're utilizing games and gamification to appeal to both this intrinsic and extrinsic motivations that different types of learners have. We have just 2 more things I want to touch upon before we open up for questions, and maybe we'll pivot back over to you, Ben, if we don't mind. But I guess the next question is you by the numbers you can see, and by the strategy you can see, Teleperformance is just doing an outrageous amount utilizing games and gamification. What does the future hold? What do you see as the next 12, 24 months as far as your strategy is concerned?
I think you actually summarized it quite well in your question, because I think you're right. The volume looks very high, but then the question is, what are we going to do with it? And I would say we're very much kind of at the end of the beginning regarding this, rather than beginning of the end. And because we know the appetite's there, and we have got good evidence that it's working, but there's still lots more to do. And I think for me, I think if I'm being open, we can still do a better job at how we measure its impact on what we do, because, as I said, the vast majority of the training this relates to is kind of 2 to 3 week training programs where people join the company, and kind of elements of knowledge checks. So actually, whilst we have good evidence of success, trying to find a sweet spot of how much we use games in a situation in those sessions is something that we're very much still working on. We've got a few projects around it, around how much people want to do self-paced versus instructor-led, and just due to the size of the company, we obviously have quite a lot of data that we're starting to try and correlate what breeds success and performance. So I think that's one thing, is just is linked around how, and the positioning of it in what we do. Then I think the other thing that conceptually I'd like to do more of is how we make it more accessible. I think I've talked about it being used in training, but I feel we can do more about making things pop up in the flow of work a bit more. We, just being honest, we don't really do it that much now. So I would like us to use games a bit more where we can integrate it into workflows more. Obviously, we've got people managing interactions often with people, or moderating social media sites. So I think using some of the games to engage and drive people a bit more, maybe if their day is not going as well as it could be, or perhaps they've struggled on a particular interaction type, I'd like us to be able to kind of automate more how we push things through. I'd be lying if I said we had a complete plan on that, but that's how I think what the future holds, because we know, kind of almost on a transactional basis, it works. We've had good success. Impact looks good, but there's always room for improvement in order to continue to drive revenue and performance.
Yeah, I think that's the case for all of us. And I think that maybe the last part you said, which is really important, right, is what are the results we're all looking for, right? So I've marked 8 here, right? But the one of the last things I heard you talk about was revenue and performance. But these are probably 8 outcomes, and there's probably 20 others that we can utilize games for. And I think that one of the things I'd encourage anyone who's listening is to first identify, what is your goal beyond just your learning goal? What is your performance goal? What are the metrics, your business goals that you want to achieve? And from there, I think thinking about how can you utilize games, what strategy overall makes the most sense to achieve them. And I think these are all obtainable utilizing games as part of your strategy. So I'm going to suggest maybe open up for some questions. I see that there are a few in the Q&A, and Jenny or Jen, I don't know if you guys want to queue them up.
Yeah, definitely. I can start that off for us. Okay, let's see. Well, the first is asking if there's a checklist or some, I guess, kind of tool while uploading games in an LMS that needs a solution designer.
Well, I'm not sure I quite understand the question. I think that kind of, and maybe Harmeet or Ben, if either of us want to jump in, but when think about well, I guess there's 2 ways probably to answer that question. So the first thing is, when you think about games, think about from more of a technical standpoint, making sure that if you're going to incorporate it into your learning management system, you either want to make sure that it is SCORM compliant or XAPI compliant, and that you can just upload, a file accordingly in there, and that data will pass through. Alternatively, want to make sure that it's something that can embed nicely into any course that you're creating, whether it's utilizing any of the rapid authoring tools or PowerPoint or whatnot. So I think that's more of a technical component or a response to that question. From the design standpoint, though, I think this goes back to a little bit what Harmeet was talking about, and Harmeet, please jump in. But I think it's about trying to understand what are you trying to solve for, and making sure that you design the right game that's going to accomplish that, not only from a simulation standpoint and but also from a business objective. What are you going to, how do you measure success? Harmeet, do you have anything to add to that question?
Yeah, no, exactly. You pretty much covered it, Stephen, but definitely on the solution designing, it's your objective and the learning needs that you have. Basis that you select a solution that you want to deploy. So as we mentioned in the slides earlier, there are off-the-shelf gaming solutions that you have, and then there are more complex one which requires more programming and coding. But then you need to define whether you're just going with the off-the-shelf one. They're quick, they're easy to scale up, but they have limited functionalities. They are limited. You just kind of use it for some, or maybe a few kind of solutions there. But then when you go with the customized ones, they definitely give you a broader aspect in terms of what you want to do and how you want to achieve it. But it requires more of the knowledge and technical knowledge in terms of the coding and programming. So it all comes down to your needs, whether you want to go with a customized solution or you want to go with one of the off-the-shelf gaming solutions.
All right, thank you. Okay, so let's see, this one's kind of involved. They're a nonprofit, small legal organization looking to launch their first LMS system and first SCORM creation software, and they're interested in gamification. So do you have any recommendations on specific LMSs or course creators?
So, I'm going to just jump back to this chart because I think it's a helpful reference point. Certainly from a scalability and cost perspective, and I'm shy about saying this because it sounds like a commercial, but the Train Arcade allows you to do a lot and for quite cost effectively. So as far as creating games, that's one I would encourage you to look at. As it pertains to authoring tools, it depends on what you're looking for, but there are three main tools in the marketplace: Articulate, Captivate, and Lectora. Once again, a bit of a commercial, but Lectora is a ELB product as well, and certainly I'm sure anyone here would be happy to walk you through that. As far as LMSs, it really, I think, comes down to what are you trying to achieve. The good news is there are 1,000 LMSs in the marketplace. And if your needs are fairly simple, there's probably a number of them that probably the vast majority of them would be good options. So please feel free to reach out to me, and I can have someone on our solutions team walk you through different options and not just ours. So if that would be helpful, I'd be happy to put you in touch with someone to
Could I just quickly add something on the end of that, Stephen? It was quite a complex question, and I think you said that as you asked it, Jenny. My comment would be also just to make, going back to one of the slides around gamification, is also just to be clear and get clarity from those around you as to what their expectations are. Because one of the challenges I have internally still, even in a huge organization, is what people when they say gamification, what do they mean? And when they say games, what do they mean? So that would just be one thing I would just get clarification on. And then also the other thing I was just going to add, in terms of LMSs, if you are at early stages and they want results fairly quickly, it could be you don't have to fully deploy an LMS, because there are some authoring tools out there where you can play content through the platform, something maybe like Easy Generator or something. So I think, yeah, I think Stephen was saying about try and understand exactly what you want and what I guess the immediate term is and what the long term is, and go from there in terms of platform. Sorry, Stephen.
No, totally agree.
Awesome, thanks. Okay, see, Dana asks if you have examples of customized solution providers for complex learning pathways.
So there are a number of custom companies out there. ELB Learning happens to be one of them. We do about 2,000 courses a year, and obviously a number of those are either exclusively games or incorporate games. I'll mention a few others, and obviously there's lots of great companies out there worth talking about. Sweet Rush is another terrific company. Allen Interactions is another great company. Artisan Learning is another great company. There's a number of terrific companies out there. Once again, I think it comes down to what you're trying to do and finding someone who has expertise in that area. And once again, happy to make some recommendations offline, if depending on what people are looking to do.
Okay. Melanie asked earlier, could there be different metrics for mid-level managers and executives?
Ben and Harmeet, I may ask you guys to tackle this, because obviously you guys are not just doing by geography or by brand or whatnot, but I'm sure by certainly executive level or mid-level. So just want to tackle that.
Yeah, I mean, for us, the information presented to different levels is different, and it probably goes back to my point. I was summarizing at the end in that internally we still need to do slightly better jobs at quantifying the impact of some of what we do and turn it into genuine ROI. So I think for CEOs, the KPIs they would be looking at are a little bit different to the training managers themselves. I think what Harmeet presented in his case studies would be typically the information that would be internal to kind of training manager, training directors in our organizations around improvements to metrics that were targeted in the solution. For me, I guess I have to report back that the investment of X has generated Y, and why we should use it. So I'd say definitely yes, we shouldn't try and create one report for all. I hopefully that answers your question, Shout, if I haven't.
Okay. So let's see. This asks what the impact of like Chat GPT, or I guess chat bots, generative AI is on gamification or has had.
I have a strong point of view, but I'm looking at Ben and Harmeet, and I think that they do too. So why don't you guys start?
No, I was gonna let you go first, because I'm also probably, it's a good question. I'm interested in your answer.
We've been playing around with that a lot, and we've been playing around with that a lot with a variety of our authoring tools. At the end of the day, AI is an incredibly powerful tool. On one hand, on the other hand, it still is in its infancy, and it is prone to having some areas that need to be checked, in my opinion, right? So I'll talk about how we're using it. We are starting to, build it, or playing around with building it into some of our game engines as a tool to author some of the games for you. But once again, in my opinion, that requires human intervention to check upon it and make sure that you agree with the content, not only the questions you're asking, the responses, the corrective feedback, all that type of stuff. Even imagery, we're using it, and this is not specifically just to our games, this is to our virtual reality platform as well, where we can build really beautiful 3D environments at a fraction of the time and obviously a fraction of the cost. Once again, we've all kind of seen, or many of us have seen some examples where you have beautiful renders of people with 7 fingers. So you want to make sure that that the imagery is representative of exactly what you want. So it does take some human intervention. I think that over the next few years we're going to get there. And by the way, it's not just Chat GPT, which obviously gets a lot of the a lot of the limelight right now. There's some other really good AI tools out there that actually are more more current, tapped into the web with and provide a lot more current information. I think that it's going to be a great tool, to use, and that's one of the reasons we're starting to incorporate into our platforms overall. I just think it's going to take some time. And by the way, last thing is beyond just some of the authoring tools we have. If you're using Storyline or Lectora or Captivate, thinking about utilizing AI to build some of those courses for you, at least to starters, once again, requiring human intervention, or even building some of your assessments based off of the stuff you have. There's a lot you can do to save time. It doesn't replace a human being. It gets you maybe there faster and gives you maybe more comprehensive information, which requires human fact check.
Oh, sorry, you go, Harmy. I know we're short of time. You go, Harmy. You'll say what I'm going to say.
No, I was just going to add to what Stephen mentioned. Long term also. I mean, so far we've been talking about gamification solutions with different technologies, but I think long term we will have gamification based on more AI, and that we have started seeing also with some of the vendors, or some of the platforms wherein you can have more of the role plays and mock scenarios, AI based role plays and mock scenarios, which is great. And I think that will evolve over time. And then AI will also have a positive impact on gamification, because gamification will stay gamification. It will not change, but it's just that it'll be infused with AI and will become more interactive and more robust, once we go that path. So yeah, sorry, Ben, just wanted to add this.
That's fine. I'll let Jenny go, as I know we're at the top of the hour.
Yes. All right. Thank you all so much. If I could get, okay, there we go. All right, thank you guys so much. That was great. Everybody, the feedback was awesome in the chat. And I would like to invite all of our audience here to join us for some upcoming training industry webinars this month, and next month. You can register for these programs and watch past webinars now at trainingindustry.com/webinars. All training industry webinars are pre-qualified for a credit hour for SHRM, HRCI, ISPI, and CPTM. What is CPTM? It is a certified professional in training management and is the only credential focused specifically on the training manager job role. By earning your credential, you will gain the skills needed to manage corporate training programs that align with your company's current and future goals. Learn more and get certified at trainingindustry.com/CPTM. And join hundreds of your peers for the fall 2023 online training industry conference and expo, or TICE. You will build the skills you need to drive impact and maximize the return on investment of your L&D initiatives. Register now for just $99 to attend live sessions specifically curated to help you develop a learning strategy from the ground up. Learn more at TICE2023.com. And one last reminder that an evaluation survey will pop up in another tab in your browser, and we'd greatly appreciate and welcome your feedback. Thanks again to Ben, Harmeet, and Stephen for your time today, and our sponsor, ELB Learning. Thank you to all of our audience for your time and attention, and for Training Industry. I'm Jen.